The alien warship drifted quietly in the endless darkness of space. Its engines were broken, its weapons silent, and its lights flickered weakly like a dying candle. For weeks the crew had tried everything to repair the ship, but nothing worked. The void around them stretched forever, cold and silent, reminding them how small and fragile they truly were. Supplies were running low, and every day the fear in their eyes grew stronger. They were soldiers once, proud and strong, but now they were stranded, lost in the empty sea of stars. The commander stood near the main viewing screen, staring at the black nothing outside. His name was Karen, and though he wore the armor of authority, inside his heart was heavy. He remembered the day their ship had been attacked. The enemy came without warning, striking fast and leaving them crippled. They had escaped destruction, but survival brought them here, to a slow death in the void. Karen thought of his crew, loyal but tired, and wondered how long before despair broke them completely. In the lower decks, young soldiers whispered in the dark. Their voices were low but filled with fear. "No one will find us," one muttered, clutching his ration pack. "We will starve here." Another soldier tried to stay brave, saying they must have hope, but his hands shook as he spoke. Hunger gnawed at them all, and their water was nearly gone. The medical bay was full of the weak, the wounded, and the hopeless. The ship felt less like a war machine and more like a tomb waiting to close. Every few hours they sent out distress calls. The communications officer repeated the same message again and again. His voice cracked as he spoke the words. But still he did it, hoping someone, anyone, would hear. The signals vanished into the void. Swallowed by the silence of space, no reply ever came. Karen pretended to believe someone might hear, but deep down he knew the truth. No Empire ship would come, not for them. They were already forgotten. Yet there was one thing that would not die: the instinct to survive. Even as despair hung heavy in the halls, the crew still clung to life. They worked with damaged tools, patched leaking pipes, and prayed the reactor would hold. But the reactor's glow was dimming, and each flicker of the lights reminded them how close the end truly was. Sometimes, when the ship fell completely dark for a few minutes, the crew sat in silence, listening to the sound of their own breathing, thinking it might be their last one-night cycle. The stars outside looked colder than usual. The crew gathered in the control room, not for duty but for comfort. They wanted to feel close before the end came. Karen looked at them and felt a sharp pain in his chest. He could not let them die like this. Not after all they had endured. He ordered another distress call. Even though everyone believed it useless, the officer obeyed, sending the message again into the Black Sea. After the call, silence returned. The crew lowered their heads, whispering quiet prayers in their own languages. Some cried softly, hiding their faces in their hands. Karen turned away, ashamed he had nothing left to give. The ship creaked around them, like an old beast sighing in its last breath. But then, something strange happened. The sensor officer's eyes widened as he leaned over his console. At first he thought it was just another system error. The sensors had been unreliable for days. Still, he checked again. His voice shook as he whispered, "Commander, there is something out there." The crew snapped their heads up, hope flashing for the first time in weeks. Karen rushed to the console, staring at the faint reading. It was small, almost nothing, but it was real. A shape in the void, far in the distance, moving. The crew gathered close, hearts beating fast. "Is it the enemy?" one asked with fear. Karen's jaw tightened. He did not know. He only knew it was something. And that was more than the void had given them in a long time. The ship was too damaged to run, too broken to hide. They could only wait. The shape drew closer, slowly, like a shadow crawling through the dark. The crew watched in silence, every second stretching like an eternity. Some whispered that it was death coming for them. Others dared to believe it was salvation. Karen said nothing. His eyes stayed fixed on the screen, watching the mysterious shadow grow. The lights flickered again, plunging the ship into momentary darkness. When they returned, the reading on the screen was stronger. The shape was definitely real. It was a vessel, large and steady. Gliding through the black, the crew held their breath. Some trembled with fear, others with fragile hope. For the first time in many cycles, the silence of the void was broken, not by their own cries, but by the signal of something approaching. The commander closed his eyes for a moment, feeling both relief and dread. Whoever it was, whatever it was, their fate was about to change. Either salvation had come or the final blow of their long suffering. In the silent void, the broken alien warship waited, its crew staring into the darkness, watching the shadow grow closer and closer, not knowing if it meant life or death. The shadow in the void grew larger with every passing minute. The alien crew stared at the dark screen in silence. Afraid to breathe, their hearts pounded in their chests, their eyes fixed on the shape that moved closer. For weeks they had seen nothing but emptiness. No ship, no star, no hope. Now something was coming, and the unknown felt more terrifying than the silence. The commander, Karen, stood tall, though his hands trembled slightly behind his back. He wanted his crew to see strength in him, even if his heart was uncertain. "Maintain calm," he said softly, but his voice carried through the chamber. The sensor officer wiped sweat from his brow and confirmed the reading again. "It is real, Commander. A ship is approaching." Fear spread like fire. Some of the soldiers whispered that it might be the enemy returning to finish them. Others whispered desperate prayers that it might be a rescue. A young alien woman named Lyra clutched the edge of her console so tightly, her claws dug into the metal. Her voice shook as she asked, "What if it is worse than the enemy? What if it is something from the deep void?" Nobody answered her. Minutes felt like hours as the shape drew closer. At last, faint lights flickered across the dark silhouette. Small at first, then brighter, steady. Like stars stitched to a hull, it was not a drifting hulk or a ghost. It was a living ship, moving with purpose. Engines hummed through the sensors. Strong and disciplined, the alien crew gasped in awe. Then a sound cracked across the comms. A voice deep and steady broke the silence. "This is the United Terran warship Resolute. Identify yourselves." The aliens froze as if struck. A human voice, not enemy, not unknown, but human. The crew looked at each other in shock. Stories of humans were whispered across the galaxy, tales of their brutality in war and their fierce pride. Some called them saviors, others called them monsters. But none of the crew had expected a human ship to appear here in the endless void. Karen stepped forward, his chest tight. He pressed the comm switch with hesitation. His voice was rough when he spoke. "This is the vessel Korthar of the Threxian Empire. We are crippled, low on power, survivors only. We request assistance." The silence after his words felt endless, as if the void itself was holding its breath. Finally, the human voice returned, calm but commanding. "Korthar, your signal is weak. We are reading heavy damage to your systems. Prepare for support drones. Do not fire." The alien crew exchanged nervous glances. Why would the humans help? Was it a trick? Yet their weapons were useless anyway. They had no choice but to obey. Moments later, small metal shapes detached from the human warship and glided silently across the void. They looked like silver birds with glowing eyes. Each drone locked onto the Korthar, scanning, fixing, probing. The aliens flinched when beams of light swept across their ruined hull, but no attack came. Instead, power lines extended, connecting to their ship. The lights inside flickered brighter for the first time in weeks. Gasps filled the control room. Some of the crew cried openly. Others touched the walls as if feeling life return to their dying vessel. "They are restoring us," whispered Lyra. Unable to believe it, her eyes shimmered with tears. For the first time, hope was real. Karen did not celebrate. He narrowed his eyes at the screen, watching the massive outline of the human warship. It was larger than he imagined, built for endurance and power. Its hull was covered in armored plates that shone in the faint light of distant stars. Weapons turrets were visible even from here. Silent but ready, it was a predator among ships, yet it had chosen not to strike. Instead, it had chosen to save. The humans opened comms again. This time another voice spoke, sharper, female. "We are boarding with engineers and medical personnel. Remain calm, we are here to assist, not harm, understood?" Karen's throat tightened. He forced himself to answer. "Understood." Minutes later, the airlocks shuddered. Heavy boots echoed through the corridors. The crew gathered nervously. Some drew small blades, even though they knew it was pointless. The doors hissed open and figures stepped inside. Humans in dark suits of armor, helmets glowing faintly. They moved with discipline, their steps measured. Weapons at their sides, but not raised. One human raised a hand in greeting. His voice came through the helmet speaker, steady and calm. "We are here to help. Take us to your main systems." The aliens hesitated, staring at the strange figures they had expected monsters. But these humans looked like soldiers of steel, organized and unafraid. Karen stepped forward and nodded. He led them down the dark corridor. The human engineers wasted no time. Their tools buzzed and sparked as they worked on broken consoles. Their medics carried glowing packs and began tending to the sick. The crew watched in silence, unable to hide their awe. Within minutes, the humans had done more repair than the aliens had managed in weeks, Lyra whispered to her friend. They are different than I imagined. They work together. Her friend nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the humans who spoke little but moved like one mind. Even Karen felt something strange stir in him. A respect he had not expected. Hours passed. The ship hummed again, life support flowing strong. The crew could breathe easier. The fear that had ruled them for weeks began to break. Yet Karen knew this was only the beginning. The humans had saved them from the void, but why? What did they want in return? As the humans prepared to leave for their ship, the female voice returned on comms. Commander Karen, your vessel is stable for now. But your reactor is unstable. We will tow you. Stay ready. The aliens gasped again, shock turned into confusion. Why would the humans risk their great warship for them? Karen bowed his head. He did not understand these humans. But he knew one truth. Fate had changed the moment they appeared. Lost in the void, they had found not death, but a shadow of salvation. Still deep in his heart, Karen wondered if this rescue carried a cost too great to imagine. The alien warship Korthar drifted more steadily now. Tethered to the great human vessel Resolute, power ran through the cables the humans had attached. Lights flickered brighter across the corridors, and air scrubbers hummed again with life. For the first time in endless cycles, the crew felt warmth and breath they thought lost forever. Yet behind every breath of relief lay a heavier question. Why were humans helping them? Commander Karen stood in the control room, watching the dark silhouette of the Resolute across the viewing screen. Its hull gleamed like a mountain of steel in the dim starlight, bristling with weapons, armored plates layered like the scales of some ancient beast. To Karen's eyes, the ship looked less like a savior and more like a predator biding its time. He had heard the stories. Humans were warriors beyond reason, soldiers who turned battles into slaughter. He wondered if he had delivered his crew from the void only to hand them to a sharper death. The comms crackled again. A voice human, calm yet strong. Korthar, prepare for inspection. Captain Hale will address you directly. The sound of those words sent a shiver across the alien crew. Few had ever spoken to a human leader, and fewer had lived to tell of it. Moments later, the screen filled with the image of a human face. A man with dark hair, scar across his cheek, and eyes like stone. He wore no smile, no expression of cruelty either. His voice rolled steady as a storm. This is Captain Nathan Hale of the United Terran warship Resolute. Your ship is unstable, but you are under our protection now. You will be towed to safety. The crew erupted in whispers. Some dared to believe these words, others shook their heads, certain it was a trap. Karen bowed slightly, his throat dry. Thank you, Captain Hale, but why? We are not of your kind. Our empire has not always been kind to humans. Hale's eyes did not soften. His words came blunt, sharp as a blade. Because no one deserves to die alone in the void. Not friend, not enemy, not stranger. He leaned closer to the screen. We leave no survivors to drift. Not if we can stop it. The silence that followed weighed heavy. The alien crew stared at their commander. And for the first time, Karen saw belief in their eyes. A flicker of something that had been missing for weeks. Hope. The humans sent more drones aboard. These ones carried heavier equipment, patching the reactor walls with strange glowing compounds, stabilizing the dangerous core. The aliens watched as the humans moved with speed and certainty. Their armor hissed softly, their tools hummed. Every gesture was efficient, precise. Some aliens muttered they had never seen such unity among soldiers. Lyra, the young alien officer, followed the humans as they worked. Her curiosity overpowered her fear. She studied how one human barked short orders and the others responded instantly. No hesitation, no doubt. They were like parts of one machine. She whispered to her friend, "If this is how humans fight wars, I understand why they are feared." Hours stretched into cycles. The Korthar was alive again, though still broken. It could breathe. It could hold its crew, but it could not move. Its engines were beyond saving without a full dock. And so the humans towed it across the stars. The void that once felt like a prison now felt like a road. But even as relief spread among the crew, unease remained. Karen sat alone in his chamber, staring at the small metal emblem the humans had left as a marker. It bore the symbol of their warship, a sharp eagle clutching lightning. It felt less like a gift and more like a warning. He wondered what price would come for their rescue. Nothing in the galaxy was free on the Resolute. Captain Hale stood among his officers, his second, Commander Reyes, frowned as she studied the alien warship on their tactical screen. "Sir, this is dangerous. They are Threxian. Their empire has fought ours for decades. Why save them? Why risk our ship?" Hale's eyes remained steady on the display. "Because that is what makes us human. Commander, we fight when we must, but we save when we can. That is the difference." The humans continued to monitor the Korthar, and the aliens began to realize the truth. This rescue was no trick. The humans were indeed risking themselves for strangers. Still, fear lingered in every corner. The void was never truly empty. Danger could come at any moment, and then it did. The Korthar's sensors flickered. Alarms whispered across the control room. Lyra gasped as she read the signals. "Multiple contacts. Approaching fast." Karen's chest tightened. He ordered the image on screen, and there it was, shadows moving through the black. Ships hunting them. Their enemy had found them again. The alien crew cried out in fear. Some begged to cut loose from the humans, afraid the Resolute would abandon them to save itself. But as the readings grew stronger, as the hunters drew near, a single signal came from the human warship, firm and unshaken. "This is Captain Hale," his voice boomed. "Stay calm, you are under Terran protection now, and we do not run." The words echoed through the alien ship, stronger than any order Karen had ever given. The crew fell silent, hearts beating fast. For the first time, they were not alone. In the endless void, the hunter ships closed in. Weapons lit the dark like fire in the sky. The humans prepared their warship, guns sliding into place, shields roaring to life. The aliens could only watch. Their fate now rested not in their own hands, but in the hands of the strange humans who had appeared like ghosts in the darkness. The void trembled as the enemy ships drew closer. Their dark hulls cut through the blackness like fangs closing on prey. The alien crew of the Korthar watched in silence, their crippled ship powerless to defend itself. Fear spread quickly. Some whispered that this was the end, that no one could stand against the hunters who had chased them for weeks. But then the humans moved. The great warship Resolute shifted position with a calm power that made the alien crew gasp. Its engines roared, sending out ripples of light that looked like a rising storm in the darkness. Across its armored body, weapons began to glow, turrets unlocking and rotating as if the ship itself had awakened from sleep. Inside the Korthar, Commander Karen gripped the railing and whispered, "They mean to fight." His voice carried both fear and disbelief. For in his empire, no sane captain would risk their ship for strangers. Yet the humans prepared for battle not as though it were a choice, but as though it were destiny. A sharp voice cut through the comms. It was Captain Hale, his tone steady as iron. "Korthar, hold your position, we will handle this. No one gets left behind." The word struck the aliens harder than any weapon. To be defended rather than abandoned was something they had never known. The enemy fleet came into view, 5 sleek warships fast and deadly. Their engines burned red, their weapons already charged. The Korthar's crew braced themselves, but the Resolute surged forward, its hull shining under the distant starlight. Its guns roared, beams of searing energy tearing into the void. The silence of space was broken by thunder. Explosions bloomed in the black like fire flowers. 2 enemy ships dodged. Twisting with surprising speed, another fired back. Bolts of plasma streaking across the dark toward the Resolute. The human ship's shields flared bright blue as the attack struck, absorbing the energy before fading again into the night. The Korthar's crew gasped. Such shielding was beyond their own designs. Lyra clutched her console, her eyes wide. "They fight like no one I have ever seen," she whispered. Her voice trembled not with fear, but with awe. Her friend beside her nodded. Unable to speak all across the broken alien warship, crew members stopped thinking of their doom and instead watched in wonder. Inside the Resolute, human officers shouted orders. "Enemy 2 is flanking, cut them off. Bring the railguns online." Captain Hale stood at the center of the bridge, his eyes locked on the tactical display. He moved with calm precision, not raising his voice. Every order sharp and controlled. His crew obeyed without hesitation, like pieces of a single mind. The enemy fleet pressed harder. Plasma blasts rained like falling stars. 2 struck the Resolute's shields. Shaking the ship, sparks flew inside its bridge. Yet the humans did not falter. "Return fire," Hale ordered. The railguns thundered. a streak of molten metal ripping through the void. It tore across an enemy hull, splitting it open in a burst of flame and silence. One hunter ship was gone. Cheers erupted across the Korthar. But Karen did not cheer. He narrowed his eyes, knowing battles were never so simple. And he was right. The enemy ships spread out, trying to encircle the Resolute. Their red engines pulsed like angry hearts as they moved to strike from all sides. The human captain saw it too. He leaned forward, his voice low but filled with resolve. "Bring us into the asteroid field. We'll use the rocks." His crew obeyed instantly. The great warship turned sharply, its engines flaring as it pulled the crippled Korthar with it. Ahead lay a field of massive rocks drifting slowly in the dark, jagged shadows waiting in silence. The aliens on the Korthar gasped in disbelief. "They are heading into the field?" Lyra whispered. "That is madness." But Karen shook his head slowly, his eyes fixed on the screen. "No, it is strategy." The Resolute weaved through the asteroids with practiced grace, its vast body sliding between stone giants as if it had done this dance 1,000 times. The enemy followed, forced to break formation. Their sleek ships darted around rocks, but their speed became a weakness. They could not stay united. Then the humans struck. From behind a shadowed asteroid, the Resolute's cannons roared. 2 hunter ships were caught off guard. Beams of fire cut across their hulls. Tearing them apart, pieces of glowing wreckage spun away. Colliding with rocks, the Korthar's crew cried out in shock and amazement. Their saviors had turned the battlefield into a trap. Yet victory came with pain. One enemy ship managed to strike. A plasma bolt smashed into the Resolute's side. The human warship shook violently, alarms blaring, hull plating cracked, and smoke filled the bridge. Still, Captain Hale did not waver. "Damage report later, weapons now." "Finish them," he barked. The humans unleashed everything. Railguns thundered, missile bays opened. Beams of energy lit the void like lightning. The last 2 hunter ships tried to flee, but the Resolute hunted them with precision. One was torn apart by missiles. The other slammed against an asteroid after a railgun strike shattered its wing, and then silence. The enemy fleet was gone. Destroyed or scattered, only wreckage floated among the drifting stones. The Resolute emerged from the shadows, scarred but unbroken, its engines still burned. Its guns still glowed. It had stood against the void and won. On the Korthar, the crew erupted with cries of joy. Some fell to their knees. Others shouted thanks to stars they had once cursed. Lyra wept openly. Her hands shook as she whispered, "Humans. They are not just warriors, they are storms." Commander Karen remained quiet. His heart thundered as he stared at the victorious warship. He understood something in that moment. The galaxy had spoken of humans as monsters, but what he saw was something else. They were protectors, relentless and unyielding. They had chosen to fight for strangers in the void, and they had won. As the Korthar drifted safely behind the human warship, Karen finally allowed himself to breathe. But deep in his heart, he knew this battle was only the beginning. Enemies would come again, stronger and more numerous, and when they did, the fate of his crew, and perhaps his people, would rest in the hands of these humans who fought like gods of war. The wreckage of the battle still drifted in the asteroid field, glowing fragments spinning silently. For the crew of the Korthar, the sight was almost unbelievable. They had expected death, yet here they were, alive, because the humans had fought for them. The ship Resolute had taken heavy damage, smoke still trailing from its wounded flank, but it remained steady, pulling the broken Korthar through the darkness like a guardian dragging a wounded comrade. Inside the alien warship, emotions clashed. Some crew members cheered, their voices echoing through the corridors. Others whispered nervously, still unable to trust what they had seen. Lyra stood in the control room, her eyes shimmering with both awe and confusion. "They fought for us," she whispered, "but why?" "We are nothing to them," no one answered her. For none knew the truth. Commander Karen remained silent. His eyes stayed locked on the great human warship that glided ahead of them. Its scarred armor glowed faintly in the starlight. Carrying dignity even in its wounds, he felt a deep respect growing inside him, but also a sharper question. What would this cost them? In his empire, help was never given freely. Every action carried a price. The comms crackled to life. Captain Hale's voice filled the Korthar. "Your ship is stable for now. We'll continue towing until we reach safer sectors. Expect enemy pursuit. They won't give up so easily." His voice carried no fear, Only certainty. Those words sent a chill through the alien crew. If the enemy returned in greater numbers, what hope would they have then? Hours turned into long cycles, the void stretched endless. And the silence returned heavier than before. The Korthar's crew gathered in groups. Some whispered about abandoning the humans if another battle came, believing the humans were simply using them as bait. Others argued that without the humans they would already be dead. Voices grew heated, hands gripped blades. Mutiny whispered in the corners of the ship. Karen called his officers to the central chamber. He stood tall, though weariness shadowed his eyes. "We live because of them," he said firmly. "Would you rather the void had taken you? Or the enemy had torn us apart? These humans fight not for gain, but for something else. Something we do not yet understand, but until we do, we follow their lead." His voice silenced the room, though doubt still lingered in their eyes. Meanwhile, on the Resolute, the mood was no less tense. Commander Reyes stood beside Captain Hale, her arms folded. "Sir, our hull is breached on 3 levels. Shields are down to 40%. We cannot withstand another wave, and yet you insist on keeping that alien hulk tied to us." Hale did not flinch, his gaze steady on the tactical display. "They are alive because of us, Reyes, and until I say otherwise, we don't cut them loose." She shook her head but said nothing more. For she knew arguing against Hale's will was like arguing against the stars. The sensors beeped suddenly, breaking the heavy silence. A warning flashed across both ships. Lyra leaned over her console, her voice trembling. Multiple signals detected. Larger fleet. Approaching fast. Panic spread instantly among the Korthar's crew. Some screamed that the humans had doomed them, that the enemy would now come with a full fleet. On the Resolute's bridge, Hale's officers looked to him. His jaw tightened. "So they return," he muttered, his voice then rose. Calm and commanding. "Battle stations. All hands prepare." The humans moved with disciplined speed, alarms blared, weapons hummed. Every officer fell into their role like pieces of a great machine. Karen's crew watched helplessly. Their ship was too damaged to fight, every weapon offline. Shields little more than flickering sparks. They were dead weight dragging the humans down. One officer hissed bitterly, "We are their burden. They will cut us free and leave us, that is the way of war." But Lyra shook her head. Her voice fierce, "No, did you not hear their captain? He said they do not leave anyone behind." Her words burned in the silence, daring the others to believe moments later. The enemy fleet appeared on the edge of the void. 10 warships this time, engines glowing blood red, weapons already charged. The sight made the Korthar's crew tremble. 10 against 1. Even the humans could not stand against such numbers. Yet the Resolute did not flee. Its engines roared louder, pulling the Korthar closer, preparing to face the storm. Captain Hale's voice thundered across the comms. "All ships of the Threxian Empire, hear me now. This vessel and its crew are under Terran protection. Any strike on them is a strike on humanity, and we will answer with fire." The words echoed across both fleets. Bold and unyielding, the aliens on the Korthar gasped in shock. To hear humans claim them as their own, even for battle, was something none had expected. The enemy gave no reply. Instead, their engines flared and they advanced. The Korthar shook as fear tore through its crew. But on the Resolute, humans stood tall. Their warship bristled with power, weapons glowing, shields shimmering. They would not retreat. They would not abandon. Karen closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of history. His people had called humans monsters, reckless and savage, yet here they were, ready to bleed for strangers in the void, he whispered to himself. Perhaps we were wrong. The stars lit with fire as the enemy drew near. The battle to come would decide not only the fate of both ships, but perhaps the bond between two species. In the void, where silence reigned, the thunder of war was about to return. The void became alive with fire. 10 enemy warships surged forward, their red engines blazing like angry suns. The Korthar's crew gripped their stations in terror, powerless to do anything but watch. Their ship was broken, its weapons silent, its shields little more than faint sparks. They were passengers in their own fate. Tied to the humans who had sworn to protect them, the Resolute moved into position, its massive frame standing like a wall between the enemy fleet and the crippled alien vessel. Its turrets glowed, shields shimmered, and engines thundered on the bridge. Captain Hale stood tall, his face calm as stone. Around him his officers moved swiftly, each word sharp, each action precise. Target lead vessel, he ordered. His voice was steady, not raised, but it carried the weight of command that silenced all fear. The first volley came. Plasma blasts ripped across the void, lighting the dark with violent brilliance. The Resolute's shields flared, a bright blue wall against the storm. The ship shook as the enemy's fire pounded it. Alarms screamed. Sparks flew across consoles, yet the humans did not falter. Hale's voice cut through the chaos. Return fire, the Resolute answered with fury. Railguns thundered like ancient gods. Hurling molten slugs across space, laser batteries flashed, slicing through the black like lightning. Missiles streaked from hidden bays, trails of fire painting arcs across the stars. One enemy warship caught the storm full force. Its shields crumbling, its hull cracked, fire burst outward. And then it exploded into fragments. The Korthar's crew gasped in awe. They had never seen such raw power, never witnessed such unity. The humans fought like a single being, their ship an extension of their will. Lyra's claws dug into her console, her wide eyes shining. They fight! Like storms given form, she whispered. Her voice trembled with awe instead of fear. But the enemy pressed harder. 9 ships remained, and they moved with ruthless coordination. They circled, striking from all sides. The Resolute's shields flared again and again, each blast draining precious power. On the bridge, Commander Reyes shouted, "Shields at 30%. Hale did not waver, his jaw tightened. "Bring us closer to the asteroids. Force them into the rocks." The Resolute turned sharply. Dragging the Korthar behind, asteroids loomed ahead. Massive stone giants drifting silently. The humans wove their warship through the shadows. Using the rocks for cover, enemy fire smashed into asteroids instead, shattering them into clouds of debris. The battlefield became chaos, glowing shards spinning like knives across the void. 2 enemy ships faltered, their own fire striking rocks, tearing into their hulls. One was crippled, spinning out of control. Another exploded as debris tore through its engines. The Korthar's crew shouted in disbelief. The humans had turned the void itself into a weapon. Yet the battle was far from over. 7 enemy warships still pressed in. Their combined fire slammed into the Resolute. Shields failed, alarms screamed, the great warship shook violently. Hull plating cracked, fire spread. Medics rushed across the decks to pull wounded crew from the smoke. Still, the humans fought, main batteries full spread. Hale commanded, his voice cut through the storm. The Resolute unleashed everything. Railguns roared, missiles streaked, beams of fire cut across the black. Another enemy ship exploded, torn apart in a blaze of white light. The humans cheered briefly, but the joy was drowned by more impacts. Plasma blasts ripped into the Resolute's side. Metal screeched, a section of the hull blew outward. In the Korthar, the aliens trembled, watching the human warship bleed for them. Lyra's voice broke as she cried out, "Why do they not flee? Why do they not save themselves?" Commander Karen's eyes burned as he whispered, "Because they gave their word." The enemy pushed closer, surrounding the human ship. Weapons locked, the Resolute was scarred. Its armor torn, its shields gone. Yet Hale stood firm, his officers looked to him. "Waiting, desperate, Captain?" one asked. Hale's eyes narrowed. He saw the enemy closing, saw the danger. But in his voice there was no fear, only fire. "We fight until the void itself breaks." The humans shifted tactics. Their ship darted among the asteroids. Not fleeing but striking, they fired from the shadows. Missiles hidden in debris fields. Railgun slugs ripping through stone to strike their targets. Another enemy ship fell, then another. The Korthar's crew erupted in cries of shock and wonder. They were watching not just survival but defiance. But the cost was high. The Resolute burned, its engines roared weakly. Its hull glowed with heat from within. The humans fought like warriors standing on a cliff against a storm. Refusing to fall, 5 enemy ships remained, their fire unrelenting. The void blazed with constant explosions. Every strike shook both vessels. On the Korthar, panic grew again. Some crew begged to cut free, to drift and hide, but Karen silenced them. His voice carried more strength than ever. "No, if we die with them. They chose to stand for us. We will not betray them now." His words silenced the chamber. For the first time his crew understood on the Resolute. The battle reached its peak. Every weapon fired, every engine strained. Hale stood unbroken in the storm. "Target the flagship," he ordered. The largest enemy vessel loomed ahead, bristling with weapons, commanding the others. The Resolute surged forward straight into the fire. Plasma blasts tore across its sides. Hull plating peeled away, yet the warship pressed on, its railguns blazing one final strike. A missile slammed into the enemy flagship's core. Fire erupted, the ship tore apart. The explosion lit the void like a newborn star. The remaining enemy vessels faltered, their coordination broken one by one. The humans struck them down until only silence remained. The void was still again, littered with burning wreckage. The Resolute floated scarred and bleeding. But alive, the Corthar drifted safely behind, its crew staring in awe and disbelief. They had witnessed the impossible, one human warship standing against 10, and surviving. Lyra's voice trembled as she whispered, "They are not like us, they are more, they are unbroken." Commander Karen placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes fixed on the battered human vessel. "No," he said softly. "They are human." The battlefield was quiet now. Only drifting wreckage and the glow of ruined ships scattered across the endless black. The enemy fleet had been destroyed, but the cost was clear. The Resolute floated scarred and bleeding, its once proud hull torn by gashes that spilled faint streams of fire and debris. Where weapons had once glowed with power, many were dark, silent, and broken. Yet still the warship endured, its engines alive, pulling the crippled Corthar behind it like a guardian unwilling to fall. Inside the Corthar, silence filled the control room. The alien crew stared at the great human ship ahead of them. For a long time, no one spoke. Some bowed their heads in respect, others wept quietly. Commander Karen stood tall at the center, his eyes heavy with both sorrow and awe. He whispered to himself, "They have bled for us." Lyra broke the silence, her voice trembling. "How many of them have fallen?" she asked. No one answered because no one knew. But they all understood the truth. Victory had come with a heavy price. The comms crackled suddenly. The voice was not Captain Hale's, but that of Commander Reyes. Her tone was rough, heavy with strain. "Corthar, the battle is done. We have wounded, heavy damage, but you are safe. We keep moving." Then the line went dead. The aliens exchanged glances, realizing Hale himself had not spoken. A shadow of fear passed through them. Was he still alive? Karen turned to his officers. "Send medics to the airlock. We will offer aid." His crew stared in shock. One officer stammered, "Aid? To humans?" But Karen's gaze cut like a blade. "They gave their lives for us. We will not stand idle while they bleed." For the first time, his crew obeyed without question. Human engineers staggered back aboard the Corthar, their armor scorched. Some carried wounded comrades on stretchers. Blood smeared their suits, their movements weary yet unbroken. The aliens rushed to help, hesitant at first. Then with growing urgency, medics of both species worked side by side. The barriers of distrust that had once separated them crumbled in the face of shared struggle. Lyra knelt beside a wounded human soldier. His breathing was shallow, his helmet cracked. She pressed a healing patch to his chest, her hands trembling. "Stay alive," she whispered. Her own people's blood had never stirred her heart so fiercely as this stranger's did now. The soldier looked at her weakly, his lips moving. His words were faint but clear enough. "Thank you." Tears stung her eyes back on the Resolute's bridge. Captain Hale stood, though his body was battered. Smoke coiled around him. Sparks fell from shattered panels. Blood trickled down his temple, but his stance was unbroken. He had not left his post for the entire battle. "Report," he demanded. His officers obeyed. "Casualties." "Heavy, 50 confirmed lost, more wounded. Hull integrity at 60%. Shields offline. Engines strained but holding." Hale closed his eyes for a moment, then spoke softly. "Mark every name. Every one of them stood for something greater." When word of the losses spread to the Corthar, grief filled the alien crew. Some bowed their heads. Others clenched their fists. They had lived because humans had died. Commander Karen gathered his people, his voice firm though heavy with sorrow. "Remember this day. Remember what it cost. Humanity did not save us for reward or conquest. They did it because they believed no one should be left to die in the void. We owe them more than our thanks. We owe them our loyalty." His words echoed in the hearts of his crew. Later, Karen requested to speak with Hale. When the human captain appeared on the screen, weary but alive, Karen straightened his back and raised his fist to his chest, the highest salute of his people. "Captain Hale," he said, his voice strong, "my crew lives because your people chose to bleed for us. The Threxian Empire once called humans reckless. Even monstrous, I see now we were wrong. You are protectors, and we will never forget it." Hale's face remained stern, but his eyes softened slightly. Commander Karen, I don't fight for empires or for words in history books. I fight so that my crew, your crew, anyone lost in the dark has a chance to live. That is enough. The Korthar's crew felt their throats tighten at those words. In their empire, war was fought for glory, for territory, for power. Never had they known a people who fought simply to keep others alive. As the two ships moved slowly out of the battlefield, the wreckage of the enemy fleet burning behind them, the void felt changed to the Korthar's crew. The humans were no longer whispers of fear but living legends. Their sacrifices had carved truth into the hearts of those who watched. Humanity was not ruthless savagery. They were relentless guardians. Lyra stood by the viewing screen, her eyes fixed on the battered Resolute. They stood against 10 and they endured, she whispered. What kind of people do that? Karen stepped beside her, his voice low but certain. Humans, the journey was not over. The void still stretched endless ahead of them, and dangers remained. But now the Korthar's crew no longer felt alone. They had seen the strength of humanity, and it had changed them forever. The stars stretched endless ahead. The void that once felt like a tomb now felt alive with possibility. The Korthar drifted quietly behind the scarred Resolute, tethered like a wounded child to its guardian. Both ships bore wounds, their hulls cracked and scorched. But they endured. They had survived the impossible, and the tale of that survival was only beginning. On the Korthar, silence filled the control room, not from fear but from reverence. The crew watched the human warship ahead of them, its lights glowing faintly in the dark. To them, the Resolute was no longer just a vessel. It was a symbol, a fortress in the stars. Commander Karen stood with his hands behind his back, his voice low but firm. We live because of them, remember this day. Remember every human life lost so we could breathe again. His crew bowed their heads, and for the first time in many cycles, they felt pride not in themselves but in those who had saved them. Lyra could not take her eyes off the Resolute. Her heart pounded with every thought. She remembered the human soldier's faint smile when he whispered thanks, remembered the way they worked together with such unity. She had grown up hearing stories that humans were reckless beasts. But the truth she had seen with her own eyes was different. They were storms, yes, but storms that shielded others. Storms that chose to protect. The comms came alive. Captain Hale's voice carried through both ships, weary yet steady. We are approaching neutral sectors. There we will leave you to rendezvous with your own fleets. Until then, you remain under Terran protection. His words echoed in the chamber, firm and undeniable. The alien crew exchanged looks of disbelief. Protection. That word had never been spoken to them before. Not by an enemy, not by a stranger, Karen answered, his voice deep with respect. Captain Hale, your deeds will not be forgotten. You stood for us when no one else would. The Threxian Empire may not understand yet, but I swear this, your names, your ship, will be remembered. Hale did not answer with pride. His reply was simple. Just remember the ones we lost. That is enough. The journey continued for long hours. The void remained dangerous, but no enemy dared approach. Wreckage of the battle floated far behind them, a silent graveyard marking where legends had been born. Human engineers still worked aboard the Korthar, patching systems, stabilizing the failing core. They spoke little, but their presence carried weight. Even in their silence, the aliens sensed loyalty. On the Resolute, the mood was heavy. The names of the fallen were being read across the ship. One by one, each name carried like a star into memory. The crew stood in silence, heads bowed, tears streaked faces. Yet they stood proud, for each loss was not in vain. Each loss meant lives saved. When the message of those names reached the Korthar, something remarkable happened. Alien soldiers, once filled with suspicion, lowered their heads too. They repeated the names, awkward in their foreign tongues but honest. They mourned for humans they had never known, and in doing so, they bound themselves to the sacrifice made for them. Lyra turned to Karen, her voice unsteady. Commander, when we return to our people, will they believe us? Will they believe that humans fought and bled for us with no demand in return? Karen's eyes darkened. They may not. Empires believe only in power and conquest, but truth has a way of spreading. And we carry that truth now. Soon the neutral sector came into view. Outposts and beacons shimmered faintly. The Resolute slowed, its engines groaning from strain. Hale's voice returned over comms. This is as far as we go from here. You will call your fleets to collect you. His tone was final. But not cold. Karen stood before the screen, raising his fist to his chest once more. Captain Hale, if ever you call for us, we will come. Our debt cannot be measured in words. Humanity has shown us a strength beyond weapons. A strength of honor. The entire Korthar crew stood and repeated the gesture. A salute given only to their greatest heroes for the first time in history. It was offered to humans on the Resolute's bridge. Hale watched. His face remained hard, but his officers saw the flicker in his eyes. A quiet acknowledgement of respect, he gave one final order. Cut the tow. Signal them clear. The cables detached, and the Korthar floated free, whole enough to endure. The two ships faced each other across the void, scarred but alive, and in that silence, an unspoken bond formed, one not of treaties or politics, but of blood, sacrifice, and survival. As the Resolute turned away, its engines flaring, Lyra whispered softly, "They leave us now, but their shadow will never leave the stars." Her words carried across the control room, and no one disagreed. The tale of the battle spread quickly, carried on transmissions, carried in whispers, across sectors. Across empires, stories grew. A single human warship had stood against 10. A single human captain had declared protection over strangers. A single crew had bled for those once called enemies. To the Threxian people, it became legend. To others in the galaxy, it became warning. And to humanity, it was simply another day of standing against the void. Commander Karen looked once more at the fading glow of the Resolute and spoke to his crew. "This is not the end, this is the beginning. The void will remember the humans, and so will we. And in the vast silence of space, where death once seemed certain, hope was born, carried on the wings of a battered warship and the unbroken will of humankind."